is it possible and reverent that we could be ministers to God? Like that's what he had the priests ultimately do, was cultivate an atmosphere to send an aroma back to him that was sweet smelling. He is the only one on planet Earth that can be in it for his glory and it not be offensive or prideful. We're at our absolute best when we're here for his glory.
I think what I pray for and I hope for is that in that time of worship, because I really believe that like worship is like lifting up just truth, like who he is, like in a faith response, like maybe something we don't feel yet or we don't maybe believe to be true yet. And I was reading this book this time and it was like a pastor that was like kind of sitting out in the congregation like as worship was going on, and he talked about knowing this man's story that was in the crowd and like how in that moment, like that was probably the one time all week that he wasn't being hit with like a million lies and he was believing truth and like he was being healed in that moment. When I get up to lead or like to worship or whatever, that's like my heart for the congregation, is that like whatever was spoken in the message, that they're able to like believe that, respond, sing the words to these songs like in faith and in truth, and like whatever lies are coming at them like can be silenced, and as they lift up like truth over their lives, that would become their reality, you know?
There's a lot of times where I don't know what to say to God, or I don't know how I feel about something, and we'll start singing a worship song and it's like a reminder, you know? It's like when we're singing, you know, you are good. Well, maybe that day I'm like, I don't know if I feel that way. But you start to sing that, you start to remind yourself of the truths that he's shown you in your life. And I don't know, it's this thing that kind of points you back to what you know that you believe at your core, even at some of the points when you're questioning.
Like I've often said, worship is the thing that got me through some of the most difficult times of my life. I would lock myself in my room and play guitar with the Hillsong for like 2 or 3 hours a day when I was younger.
You know Hillsong?
I know Hillsong.
I thought it was Jeremy Camp.
No.
So can I ask you a question based on that? Because I love it. Your passion for worship, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of got birthed out of you losing your dad.
Yeah.
And like it was a hideaway. It was like a haven for you, right? In the midst of just all hell breaking loose.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine, what were you, 10 years old, 11 years old?
I was 12.
12 years old, losing your dad. And you said, I remember because we talked about before, you would just lock yourself in and start playing guitar and singing. And so that's the power of worship right there. It was medicine to a hurt heart.
Absolutely, it's just it's his presence. It really wasn't me doing anything. It's just entering into his presence and then him just kind of ministering to me.
I've been thinking a lot about just like the importance of corporate worship and like studying more, reading more. Like, what's the point of coming here with 1,000 people if we can just be in our prayer closet and, you know, the bride of Christ, like the church is called the bride. And I am not the bride of Christ, like you are not, but corporately we are. And what does a bride and a groom have? They have intimacy, they have connection that is not shared elsewhere. And so just thinking about that, like what worship serves, it's for him, but he loves to lavish his love back on his bride. And so I think the goal of every single weekend experience is to create a space where we can hear his voice clearly and experience his love. It's more than just being, you know, wired to like music, but it's just a vehicle to really experience intimacy with him, so.
I feel like we forget that we're children of God and that we still have like a need that's like, and unless we reach out for him, we're not gonna move to that next place. We're not gonna move from glory to glory. It maybe doesn't have to be like a tangible reaching up, but I do wanna see that. Like I want people to know that like, that posture is important.
I'd love for them to feel empowered and encouraged to have that freedom to respond, because I think people don't know that they have that freedom. They don't want to stand out, whether that be for one reason or the other. But like, that's what that time is for. Like, respond to God.
There's been so many times when I'm on stage, and maybe I'm in one of those times when I'm like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it or whatever, and I'll look out and I'll see somebody just wholeheartedly going after it, and that'll bring me into worship, because it's like, man, I don't know what he's going through. Doesn't matter. He's leading me into worship. She's leading me into worship.
I can't say it enough. To me, I've done my job if I can back away from the mic and people just sing.
I'd love to see like all the campuses like singing so loud together. And it's like, there's a community there. It's like, oh, these are my brothers and sisters. Like, I know that she's struggling. I know that he's struggling, but like, he still lives in his voice. He's like singing out, I'm gonna join him. And in that is like, oh, I'm understood. Like, I'm part of something. I belong to a family. We're all the bride. We're all together. And there's just power of joining with people and saying like, hey, let's do this together. Let's lift up Jesus together.